The world of sea entertainment was thrown into an emotional whirlwind this week when reports surfaced that actor and singer Xiao Zhan paid a private visit to his longtime friend and the untamed co-star Wang Yibo, who has been recovering quietly in a hospital following his recent car accident. What started as a quiet evening turned into a moment that melted millions of hearts worldwide. A reunion that was equal parts emotional, powerful, and unforgettable. As the sun dipped below the Beijing skyline that evening, the hospital's corridors buzzed with quiet anticipation. Nurses whispered among themselves, their eyes flickering toward the VIP ward where Wang Yibo had been recovering for days under heavy security and minimal visitation. Only a handful of close associates had been allowed to see him, until that night, when the sliding doors of the ward opened and Xiao Zhan stepped in. No cameras, no entourage, no grand announcement. Just one man walking down a long, sterile hallway, his cap pulled low, his mask hiding most of his face. But his eyes, sharp, emotional, glistening with worry, revealed everything. "Where's his room?" Xiao Zhan asked softly when he reached the reception desk. His voice trembled ever so slightly, betraying the calm front he tried to maintain. The nurse on duty recognized him instantly, her lips parting in surprise. "Room 508, she whispered, as if even speaking too loudly might disturb the sacred silence surrounding Wang Yibo's recovery. With a nod, Xiao Zhan began that slow, heavy walk toward the room that held not just his friend, but countless shared memories. Laughter on set, endless rehearsals, motorcycle rides through city streets, and the silent understanding that only two kindred spirits in the chaotic world of fame could share. When he finally pushed open the door, the world seemed to pause. Wang Yibo lay by the window, his face pale but peaceful. The faint hum of machines filled the room, along with the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. His hand rested loosely by his side, and four-line trailing up to the stand. The city lights outside flickered against his profile, illuminating the softness of his features. Xiao Zhan froze at the doorway. For a long moment, he couldn't move, memories of laughter, danger, and friendship flooding through him like a tidal wave. Then, quietly, he stepped closer. "Yibo," he whispered. The young man's eyes fluttered open, sluggish but aware. And when he saw who stood before him, a faint smile curved his lips. "You came," he said, his voice raspy yet warm. "I had to," Xiao Zhan replied, pulling a chair closer. "I couldn't just sit and read headlines about you. You scared everyone, you know." Wang Yibo gave a small laugh, the kind of laugh that still carried his trademark calmness, though weaker this time. It wasn't supposed to happen. The car just lost control. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken emotions. Xiao Zhan reached out, his hand gently brushing Yibo's arm, as if to confirm that he was really there, alive, breathing, safe. "You're lucky," Xiao Zhan said softly. "It could have been worse." "I know," Yibo murmured. "I keep thinking about it. One second I was driving, and the next, everything went black. When I woke up, all I could hear were the sirens." Xiao Zhan's gaze softened. "And now you're here. That's what matters." For a while, they just sat there. No words, just the quiet hum of the machines and the faint city lights streaming through the curtains. It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes, a silence built on years of shared struggles, triumphs, and quiet loyalty. Then Yibo looked at him, his eyes searching. "You've been busy lately. New projects, new endorsements. You didn't have to come all the way here." Xiao Zhan chuckled. "Don't talk like I'm a stranger. You'd have done the same for me." "Of course," Yibo said without hesitation. "You're my brother." Those words hung in the air, simple but powerful. In a world where fame often fractures bonds and turns friends into competitors, that one line, "You're my brother," reminded everyone why this duo continues to hold a special place in fans' hearts. As the evening deepened, Xiao Zhan unpacked a small box he had brought with him. Inside were some of Yibo's favorite snacks, a small action figure, and a handwritten note. "What's this?" Yibo asked, amused. "Motivation," Xiao Zhan replied. "You'll be up and riding again in no time. Just take your time healing first." The two spent hours talking, Not about fame, not about work, but about simple things, the food they missed, the fans who still posted daily messages praying for Yibo's recovery, the old days of the Untamed when they would shoot under the blazing sun and laugh until they forgot their lines. At one point, Yibo's expression turned thoughtful. I kept hearing voices in my sleep after the crash. Everything was blurry, but there was one voice that kept saying my name. I thought it was a dream. Xiao Zhan's brows furrowed. Maybe it wasn't. Yibo blinked, realization dawning. You were there? Xiao Zhan nodded slowly. The night of the crash. I went to the hospital as soon as I heard. They didn't let me in then, but I stayed outside all night. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Yibo's eyes glistened, his usual stoic composure breaking for just a second. You're ridiculous, he murmured, half laughing, half choked up. Yeah, Xiao Zhan smiled. Ridiculous enough to care. The mood softened, and laughter slowly filled the room again. That familiar rhythm that reminded everyone why their friendship has become a cultural phenomenon. It wasn't built on publicity or fan service. It was real, rooted in shared experiences and unwavering support. As midnight approached, Xiao Zhan stood, reluctant but knowing he had to leave. You need rest, he said. I'll come back tomorrow. Yibo smiled, his eyes heavy with fatigue, but glowing with gratitude. Bring coffee next time. The hospital one tastes like sadness. Xiao Zhan laughed, tucking the blanket around him like an older brother. Deal. Before leaving, he turned one last time at the door, watching as Yibo drifted back to sleep. For a moment, he simply stood there, a soft smile on his lips, his eyes reflecting pride, relief, and something deeper. An unbreakable bond forged through fire, fame, and fate. Outside, the night breeze carried the faint hum of the city, but inside that hospital ward, time felt still. The visit was short, but for fans and witnesses, it was a moment that would echo forever. The quiet reunion of two souls who had walked through storms together and come out stronger. By the next morning, the internet was ablaze. Photos had leaked, blurry, grainy shots of Xiao Zhan entering the hospital, his head bowed, his hands in his pockets. Hashtags exploded across Weibo and Twitter. Hashtag Xiao Zhan visits Wang Yibo. Hashtag Zhan reunion. Hashtag Brotherhood beyond fame. Fans flooded social media with emotional tributes, edits, and fan art. Some wrote, they aren't just co-stars, they're soul brothers. Others shared heartfelt messages praying for Yibo's full recovery and thanking Xiao Zhan for showing the kind of loyalty rarely seen in showbiz. Neither of them posted anything publicly. No statements, no photos, no PR stunts. But maybe that's what made it so powerful. Sometimes, the most genuine moments are the ones that aren't shared for the world, just lived. The world thought Xiao Zhan's visit to Wang Yibo's hospital room ended that night when he walked out of room 508, leaving behind soft laughter and heartfelt promises. But what fans didn't know, what no headline captured, was that he didn't leave immediately. After stepping out of the room, Xiao Zhan lingered in the quiet corridor, his hand pressed against the cold metal door. His heart was still racing, emotions swirling faster than he could control. Seeing Yibo so fragile, so unlike his usual fierce and composed self, had shaken him deeply. He slowly walked toward the end of the hallway, stopping by the large glass window overlooking the city. The lights of Beijing twinkled below, but for Xiao Zhan, the world outside seemed distant. All he could think about was how close he had come to losing someone he considered a brother. The nurse from earlier approached him quietly. Mr. Xiao, she said gently, you should rest. Visiting hours are over. But Xiao Zhan turned, a faint smile on his lips. Is it okay if I stay in the waiting area tonight? I just want to be nearby. The nurse hesitated for a moment, recognizing the sincerity in his eyes, then nodded. All right, I'll bring you a blanket. And so, as the hospital lights dimmed and silence settled over the corridors, Xiao Zhan found himself alone in the small waiting area just outside Wang Yibo's room. He sat there, his elbows on his knees, staring through the glass panel of the ward door, where Yibo slept soundly under soft fluorescent light. Hours passed. Nurses walked by occasionally, their steps echoing faintly. But Xiao Zhan didn't move. He watched every small twitch, every shift of Yibo's hand, making sure he was okay. His phone buzzed several times, messages from his manager, his team, and countless missed calls, but he ignored them all. Tonight wasn't about work or fame. Tonight was about being there. At around 2:30 a.m., a faint sound came from the ward. Yibo stirred in his sleep, wincing slightly. Instinctively, Xiao Zhan jumped up, pushed open the door, and hurried inside. Hey, easy, he whispered, rushing to his side. Yibo blinked awake, a little disoriented. You're still here? Xiao Zhan smiled softly. Of course. Where else would I go? Yibo gave a weak chuckle, his usual mischief flickering in his tired eyes. You always were the stubborn one. And you always were the reckless one. Xiao Zhan shot back with a small grin. The room filled with gentle laughter that warmed the sterile air. For a moment, the hospital didn't feel like a place of pain or fear. It felt like home. Then a silence settled, the kind that wasn't awkward but full of meaning. Xiao Zhan sat down beside the bed again, resting his elbows on the mattress. His voice softened. You scared me, Yibo. When I heard what happened, I couldn't breathe for a moment. Yibo looked at him, his eyes glassy. I didn't mean to. Everything just went out of control so fast. I thought it was the end. Xiao Zhan's throat tightened. Don't ever say that again. You've still got so much left to do. You've got fans who love you, a career to chase, and people who can't imagine a world without you. For a second, Yibo just stared at him, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled faintly. And you're one of those people? Xiao Zhan didn't hesitate. Always. That one word hung in the air, carrying with it years of friendship, loyalty, and brotherhood. A faint breeze blew through the slightly open window, rustling the curtains. The moonlight streamed in, casting a silver glow across the room. Yibo's gaze drifted upward, lost in thought. Do you ever think about how strange this all is? He asked. What do you mean? Xiao Zhan asked. How life can change in seconds. 1 minute you're speeding down the road, the next you're here, broken, weak, and watching everything slow down. It makes you realize what really matters. Xiao Zhan nodded, his voice barely a whisper. That's why I'm here. For a long moment, they said nothing more. The hum of the monitors filled the space, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful, the kind of silence that only two people who truly understood each other could share. Yibo closed his eyes again, his breathing evening out. Xiao Zhan stayed, his hand resting gently over Yibo's. He sat there until he was sure his friend was asleep, then leaned back in the chair. Morning began to creep in slowly, soft rays of light spilling across the room. A nurse entered quietly, surprised to see Xiao Zhan still there, his head tilted slightly, dozing in the chair beside Yibo's bed. When Yibo woke up hours later, the first thing he saw was Xiao Zhan, still there, still watching over him. His heart softened in a way words couldn't express. You didn't go home? Yibo asked groggily. I told you, Xiao Zhan said, stretching and smiling. I wasn't leaving you alone. Yibo's lips curved into a small smirk. You're unbelievable. Yeah, Xiao Zhan replied, laughing. That's what everyone keeps telling me. Later that day, when doctors came in for rounds, Xiao Zhan politely stepped aside, but didn't leave the room. He listened carefully as they explained Yibo's progress, nodding at every instruction like a concerned guardian. When they left, Yibo looked at him and teased. You're acting like my manager now. Someone has to make sure you listen for once, Xiao Zhan said, chuckling. Fans would never see these quiet, unguarded moments, the laughter, the teasing, the genuine care. But for those who caught glimpses through leaked photos of Xiao Zhan leaving the hospital later that afternoon, the warmth in his eyes said it all. That day became a legend in the fandom, a moment that redefined what true friendship meant in the world of celebrities often accused of superficial ties. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo weren't just co-stars or colleagues. They were brothers bound by fate, respect, and a love that transcended fame. In the days that followed, Xiao Zhan continued to visit, sometimes bringing books, sometimes just his presence. Nurses would whisper, he's here again, and smile quietly because they had seen it, that rare, genuine bond that few people ever get to witness up close. One evening, before leaving, Xiao Zhan turned back and said, "Get well soon, Yibo. The world's waiting for your smile again." Yibo's reply was soft but filled with determination, "And I'll be back faster than you think." Their friendship, tested by time and circumstance, had only grown stronger through pain. And as the world watched from afar, one thing became clear: real loyalty never fades, even when the cameras do.